Hello and welcome to Turkey Talks. Today we are going to talk about recent developments between Turkey and Greece. Two foreign ministers came together. There was a donors conference in Brussels. So there are positive developments between the two countries. Plus Turkey's new rapprochement with Egypt. The Turkish foreign minister Cavusoglu was in Egypt. So actually maybe we can bring these two issues together because it's in the Eastern Mediterranean, and Turkey's new opening probably is changing balances here. Maybe if we have time, we are going to talk about Iraqi Prime Minister's visit to Ankara. I'm joined by Zuhal, Mert, Uzuner from Marmara University. Zuhal, welcome. And Kadir Ustun from Washington. Kadir, welcome to you as well. Let me start with Zuhal, if you allow me. Zuhal, we know that your main area of interest is Turkish-Greek relations, and we have seen a very tough exchange of words between the two countries' leaders for the last couple of months, maybe years. But after the quake, Dendias came to Turkey. Then Turkish foreign minister also met with him in different places. How do you see this reapproachment between the two countries? Do you think there is a base, or this is just for this time, because of the quake and, because of emotional, feelings, or do we have something concrete behind this close, bettering relations, maybe?
And when we remember the rapprochement and history of Turkish-Greek relations, there are different periods of time in modern Turkish Republic era. But all these periods have their own characteristics. I see that this is the last rapprochement seems a little bit much more similar with the latest one, in between Ismail Cem and Yorgos Papandreou, especially just after the earthquake in 1999. We had a better atmosphere and close relations in between Greece and Turkey. But as we have always, there is again an emotional discourse about this rapprochement. Yes, we had a very tense relationship before this earthquake, and earthquake created a positive impact on the rising tension, especially in public the discourses. Because when we look at these discourses in both sides, especially in Greece, the Greek government, especially Dendias discourse, the style of speech, created a continuous the rise in this tension, and the result of this, we see that especially in Greek public opinion, there was a huge fear of probable Turkish occupation anywhere in Thrace or in the islands. So these kind of things were much more common topics to be discussed in Greek public opinion. But now there is an opportunity for government to change this discourse, because it's not also very easy for a government to change this discourse, because the opposition can accuse very easily these politicians about being afraid of what they heard or saw from the let's say the enemy factor. That's why they had a kind of fear to decrease this tension. But now there is an opportunity to decrease that. And from people's approach, I never thought that there is a continuous feeling of antagonism against each other, especially even during the 2020 or 2021. We were talking about the rising amount of tourism visits from the both sides to the other side. I mean, the islands were very, very popular, especially for Turkish tourists, and it's the same for the Greek tourists visiting very different places of Turkey. Why I say this? Because there has no feeling of fear or improbable, let's say the friction, of a hot conflict. These were not so much at the sentence of the ordinary people. That's why we can say that this latest development after the earthquake created a kind of empathy, and that created a kind of empathy, but also something connected with the previous period of time, because what is realized in between Papandreou and Ismail Cem was an example. What happens now is a kind of reminder. Here, there's something very important too. This government has very important difficulties, especially in domestic politics. I'm talking about the Mitsotakis government. Just after this, the train crash, many people lost their lives, especially students who are students in the northern cities of Greece, lost their lives. And now this changing atmosphere and agenda created a kind of the base for the government, I think, for, let's say, the reminding somehow a successful period of the Greek foreign policy. So I think they are also in a kind of difficulty to define their position also for their domestic political agenda. But what is important for Turkish-Greek relations, of course, this kind of the disasters and what happened, the accident in Greece created a kind of human dimension again for our discussions, daily discussions. But I don't see any kind of shift in the major problems. This is very important. We should not forget that. I always say that Ismail Cem was talking exactly the same arguments of our contemporary foreign minister. So this is the essence. It's not so easy to change these agenda topics and the priorities in foreign policy. We should be very, let's say, aware about that fact in order to keep the atmosphere positive, and keeping a kind of the platform to discuss more. This can be just a beginning for a positive agenda, not a solution.
Well, when we look at the positive agenda meeting, common action plan, there are many issues that both countries decided to work together, but these are mainly, soft issues, we can say, like culture, tourism, etc., things like that. But when we look at the problems between the two countries, we have the Cyprus issue, we have FIR, flight information range, continental shelf, major problems. And recently we know that United States and some European Union countries are supporting Greece. The US is building military bases, etc. So there are really tough issues to be addressed, but still we can say a positive agenda. Some people, I'd like to bring the issue of Egypt. Some people say that because Turkey now is closing the gap between Egypt and Turkey, so Greece is maybe because of this is trying to soften its position vis-a-vis Turkey. Kadir, do you have anything to add to this?
I wanted to actually ask a question to Zuhal. Just like Bora just mentioned, this relationship with the United States, I was wondering how it is perceived inside Greece, how Greek politicians, Greek strategists look at that relationship. We know Turkey is not comfortable with that, and that was one of the reasons why tensions ran really high months ago prior to the earthquake. But how do they think about this? How do they think about U.S. creating new bases inside Greece, and in terms of their security perspective and their relationship with Turkey, how do they see it?
Uh, may I answer automatically?
Yes.
So, we can say that the U.S.-Greek cooperation is considered as a very important tool of Greek foreign policy ambitions. This is very important to start with it. Because whatever they say about Greek-Turkish relations and the resolution of these bilateral problems in the region, they refer that Greece is an ally without any preconditions. So Greece is ready to cooperate about everything which is required for Greek-US cooperation. So that means something from the eyes of Greek politicians. That must be praised. That must be somehow supported by the U.S. politicians. So when Turkey come closer to United States, they have a kind of the feeling of, let's say, the hesitation about their arguments, how much it is true, because when we remember different periods of time about the Greek-Turkish relations and the U.S. role, they remember always this Cyprus operation of Turkey. So you can remember that all these things, especially in 1970s, were considered as a part of NATO and US policies. And if Turkey had opportunity to offer something to United States, Turkey will be much more preferable, and Turkey can overcome all these, let's say, the benefits given by Greece to United States. So they think that Turkey can manage somehow to do that, because from many politicians' perspective, Turkey has such kind of capacity which is somehow much more stronger than Greek politicians. So from that approach, this rapprochement in between Turkey and United States is very, let's say, sensitive, must be followed very carefully, and they are mostly talking about this issue. So it can be transformed into something very dangerous, and it can be a source of losing all the base of this politics created over being an ally without any condition. So this is much more central in public discourses when we look at Greek public discussions.
Thank you.
Kadir, the Greeks also are going to go to the elections probably in May, together with Turkey. There are issues like this latest train accident. It became an issue, especially the Greek opposition parties are making a big issue out of that, and also protests are going on. Do you think this election process may affect Turkish-Greek relations? Because we know that Greek nationalists are very strong, but at the same time, Greek left. The Syriza party ruled the country for many years. Do you think Turkey can be an issue in the election campaign, which may harm because of the nationalist rhetoric against Turkey may rise? What do you think about that? Do you think this will be a major issue, or Greece has other strategic thoughts when they start getting closer to Turkey?
I mean, for outside, the observers like myself, as far as I know, that's always an issue in every election, but maybe Zuhal can talk about that a bit more in detail. But I wanted to talk about, Bora, your reference to earthquake and the train accident and how those are becoming election issues. On the one hand, governments usually what we would call earthquake diplomacy, that is perceived to be helpful for the ruling parties in general, because then they have a lot of counterparts outside the country, international donors, other countries who come to the help, and then at least for a while, some of the main issues, critical problems between the countries are put aside, at least temporarily. They're not highlighted, they're not, and then it helps bring the politicians together, the foreign ministers together, like you mentioned, Cavusoglu and Dendias. But, Professor Zuhal mentioned that, right? The actual policy issues don't go away. The differences remain. And we saw that with the Secretary of State Blinken's visit to Turkey right after the earthquake. In that press conference with Cavusoglu, they did still repeat the same positions they had about F-16s and, other strategic issues, Syria and FETÖ and all that. So on the one hand, the earthquake diplomacy can help, disaster diplomacy maybe we can say, and it can help the ruling parties, but at the same time, the opposition tries to use these as well to show that, governments failed in their response. So it can go either way, or, these two arguments, these two debates go head to head going into the elections. Of course, the train accident, while it's a major thing, it's nothing comparable to the earthquake, the vast impact, incredible impact of the earthquake inside Turkey. But in terms of how these disasters impact politics, like you said, both countries headed to elections. These will definitely play a role in the domestic politics. But as I said, maybe Zuhal can explain how that plays out domestically inside Greece a little better than me, for sure.
Well, what do you think about this, Zuhal? Do you think this domestic politics will put positive or negative effect on Turkish-Greek relations?
I think these elections in Greece is tightly connected with the elections in Turkey. This is not my comment. You know that Mitsotakis repeated that several times. According to Mitsotakis, they have to follow the date of elections in Turkey in order to find out the perfect timing for the Greek elections. Because, there was a kind of exaggerated fear of probable Turkish attack in Aegean Sea. So that's why, yes, there is a connection in between the domestic politics and foreign policy discussions, especially Greek-Turkish relations. But it's not working anymore for Mitsotakis government. I should underline that it's not because of Turkey. It was because of this government, Mitsotakis government, since the beginning. I say that several times. Why? Because this government is insisting on the importance of cooperation with United States. According to them, it will be another, let's say, the second success story for Greek foreign policy, as it is done by Smith's government by integrating European Union into Greek foreign policy and Hellenization of European policy towards this region. Now, this government had a target to Americanization of Greek foreign policy and, let's say, Hellenization of Greek foreign policy. This penetration in between these foreign policies a very important opportunity according to this government. That's why all their investment for their success was on that issue. And it is so big a topic of criticism coming from the domestic politics of Greece, especially Syriza is accusing this government being a puppet of United States without asking anything for the benefit of Greek people. So this is important. But when they become unsuccessful, when they face with domestic issues again, especially they started to face that this government is not so internationally successful and accepted by all the actors. After pushbacks, we know that pushbacks in Aegean Sea created a negative image of this government, and it is criticized also by domestic actors by starting from Syriza. So they accuse the government by being, let's say, the illegal and illogical. So this is important. Another important topic was illegal listenings of different parts of, let's say, different politicians and some the military personnel, high-level military personnel, generals. So this is also another scandal which somehow targeted this government as being so unsuccessful and somehow illegitimate, because this is not something acceptable. So and this train accident was the third step. So they had so many different scandals, and let's say the problems had to be explained and answered, and they are not so successful actually in all these issues. So Turkish threat is not an answer to all these problems. So there must be another answer to that, and all their investment fell down now, especially after the visit of the U.S. Let's say the representatives, especially after the earthquake. And this earthquake created also a kind of opportunity for many different actors in our region. When you look at these developments after the earthquake, visit of the Egyptian foreign minister, some others, so that created a kind of human base to overcome existing policies, to open up a new chapter for the relationship. So this is something positive for Turkey. When you look at the discussions in Greek public, you can see that, okay, what happened in Turkey is so tragic and must be somehow supported from a humanitarian aspect. But from another aspect, it gave a kind of sympathy to Turkey and Turkish people. So it must not be supported so much. So it must be limited at that point, according to some very right-wing politicians. So the discussions are much more about the success and unsuccessful side of this government in Greek domestic politics.
Well, talking about domestic politics and elections, Turkey is also heading to elections, and we are talking about Turkish foreign policy. Kadir, maybe we should look at what's happening recently as we discuss Turkish-Greek relations are moving forward. At the same time, Turkey now communicating with the Egyptian government after 10 years of tense relations. Now the two foreign ministers are talking about re-establishing diplomatic relations, opening embassies, and also last week Turkey decided to say okay to Finland's join for NATO. NATO bid for Finland's bid for NATO membership is now approved by Turkey. So actually the president, the Turkish foreign ministry could wait until the elections before taking these bold actions, but the Turkish government is moving forward. Why do you think so? Do you think these are for the elections, or Turkey is just adapting the new situation, or trying to adjust the new security environment? What is your understanding of it?
Well, I think it's both, Bora. We talked about this. It's been since the end of COVID, which, officially you can it hasn't ended, but past a year and a half perhaps has been kind of post-COVID situation in many ways around the world, especially in Turkey. Turkey is one of the countries that normalized much quicker than many countries, including the United States, I would say. But Turkey made many efforts in the region, reached out to UAE, reached out to Egypt, Israel, normalized fully. So this is a broader context of post-pandemic normalization of relations with almost all the regional countries, Saudi Arabia, we should say, right? And then in the context of Ukraine war, of course, it has maintained its strong commitment to Ukraine, while also keeping relations with Russia. When Sweden and Finland's applications came and they sought a quick, fast track to membership, Turkey was not opposed to the principle of their membership, but they needed to satisfy certain things, certain parameters. And there was a agreement between Finland, Sweden, and Turkey about how to proceed. And that tripartite agreement has been implemented, and Finland satisfied all the conditions Turkey had. With Sweden is trying to. They changed their constitution to be able to pass an anti-terror law, which will come in effect in June. And after June, if they can move fast, they may make it to July, NATO summit. And it may be in July, both countries might become members. So in many ways, these processes have been ongoing, but earthquake in Turkey created a new sense we've been discussing, both with Greece, Armenia, Israel, many countries, a new sense of, okay, we need to cooperate, talk more. And this donors meeting in Europe raised close to $7 billion, I think, euros. Some of it is based on projects. Some of it is other kinds of credit lines being opened to Turkey, and then some of it is just straight up donations. That's very positive. It's, of course, the challenge is huge. Damage is estimated to be more than $100 billion. But if these partners, donors remain engaged, this is good for regional stability, improved relations with both the West and the East. This picture will, of course, have a bearing on elections, right? We can never separate the domestic elections with foreign policy. These things go hand in hand. It helps President Erdogan that, he's engaging foreign partners, allies, NATO allies of Turkey, while also making up with countries in the region, including Egypt, Saudi Arabia, UAE. And, in Turkish elections, like in the US, foreign policy is very limited. Its impact is very limited. But in a country like Turkey that is directly affected by regional developments all the time, and we should capitalize that all the time, right? Any kind of conflict, be it ethnic conflict, geopolitical competition between middle powers, the fight between Israel and Iran, Russia. There are so many conflict zones and pressure points in the region that in the minds of the electors, I know this even from my family, a leader that can guide the country through these troubled waters, that's a plus, and that's a requirement. In the U.S., that's a requirement in the minds of the electorate that leaders should have. In the United States, that's important too, but it's a whole different ballgame. People look at the economy first, unemployment, and other things. So I think it definitely makes a difference that you can play that game at the international level. And I'm guessing, Professor Zuhal, that must be the same for Greek leaders, right? Being able to stand up to Turkey, being able to engage U.S. policymakers and the European community. It must be important, right? This kind of positive foreign relations for Greek leaders when the time of elections come around. That debate must go on. I'm sure it's more than what happens in the United States.
Yeah, well, Zuhal, maybe you can talk about this a little bit, but I'd like to ask you another related issue. If you study international relations in Turkey, if you're a Turkish international relations expert, you don't have luxury to focus on one subject because everything is related to each other. When we talk about Turkish-Greek relations, somehow we can talk about war against terror, etc. Also, when we talk about Turkish relations with Greece, it's about NATO and the EU. So, what is your opinion about Turkey's equal to Finland's NATO bid? Do you think Turkey now put more pressure on Sweden after approving this? And do you think Turkey and Greece leaders decided to? They agreed on supporting each other in international organizations. Do you think this will also help Turkish-Greek relations indirectly?
First of all, Finland's NATO membership was very much expected, according to me, because we know that Turkey has a long relationship with Finland, especially about this arbitration mechanisms, mediation conferences. We know that all these organizations were in close cooperation with Finland diplomatic missions. So we see that there was a functioning mechanism to understand each other and to understand each other's the tendencies, the methods to approach the issues. That's why since the beginning I was thinking that there was a much easier process with Finland. But with Sweden, there is another path. We need to underline that maybe it's not only because of the existing governments in Finland, what happened as a result. It is related with how they look at the world and how they define their roles and the missions. It is like a kind of political culture, and they had difficulty to overcome that. At the end, if you want to be a part of international organization, and if it is such kind of organization, NATO, because it is a kind of promise to give the other members of the alliance if something happens against this alliance. So you have to be a part of this war. You have to engage automatically. That means you cannot judge first by thinking that how much it fits into your own values judgment. So this is another way of activity. So that needs an automatic participation to the conflicts. So this was the most important barrier in front of Sweden, and they have still difficulty to overcome that, because how they are used to do the practices are so different than what is required in NATO the structure. And when we look at Turkey and Greece relations inside the international organizations, yes, international organizations are very promising, sometimes not so satisfactory at the end, but we have only them to cooperate and to create a kind of mechanism, at least for being continuous contact So this is very important part of international organizations. And we know that Turkey is insisting on international organizations. Since maybe 10 years, we hear from Turkish officials there is need for regional organizations, regional conferences. Multilateralism is the only way of solving the disagreements in our region, especially Eastern Mediterranean. What we face as difficulty and disagreement, we have to be in contact and we have to listen to each other to solve this issue. These were the arguments of Turkish foreign policy. But it's not always easy, as you know, because the national standpoints are not changing so fast. When you look at the developments, especially about this, the Turkish-Egyptian rapprochement, after so many years, Turkey and Egypt tries to normalize relationship. They face still several difficulties, and they are again about regional problems. For example, Libyan issue. What will happen in Turkish foreign policy? Do we expect any very sudden and very deep change in Turkish foreign policy towards that region? If you remember, in 2021, there was a declaration of Egyptian side. We discussed it so long. The prerequisites, a list of prerequisites of more than 10 the different prerequisites they were asking, and many of them were related with paradigmatic changes in foreign policy, Turkish foreign policy. So we can see that there are limitations about the potential of international organizations and multilateralism. Okay, it's promising, but how much the actors, potential actors, are eager to do that? If you remember, in this prerequisites, there was a kind of barrier against being a member of EastMed Forum, which is designed as an international platform, but if it is depending on prerequisites, then it will not function. So these are so important. But after the earthquake, Turkey has done another initiative about this, the immediate responses to this, let's say the crisis that arising from this earthquake or other things. There must be a kind of mechanism, especially at the regional level. So that can be a base as a kind of starter for an alternative regional platform, but still they have difficulty.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your comments, Zuhal, Mert, Uzuner, professor from Marmara University. Kadir, thank you very much. Actually, we talked about, maybe if we have time, I said at the beginning, we will talk about American occupation in Iraq 20 years after, but I think we have to do it next time. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, Bora. Thank you, Zuhal.